When you think of Jeep, what's the first thing that comes to mind? I think of gnarly rock crawlers, but I also think of mall crawlers and cars that spoiled kids named Tiffany get for their Sweet 16.
What the hell? I don't want my car now! Don't tell me my car now! I told her not to get it. I wanted to damn my body. I didn't want the car. That's not even the car I even wanted. This is such an idiot.
However, the origin of this brand and its reputation was forged in the largest human conflict that we have seen, hopefully that we will ever see. A conflict that cost 75 million people their lives. Of course, I'm talking about World War II. Before this vehicle was even conceived, the war was already in full swing.
Shanghai has fallen to Japan. Before the final terrific onslaught of Japan's mechanized army, China is forced to withdraw beyond the Suchao Creek, and Japan's army commander controls all the native sections of the world's sixth largest city.
In the Pacific, Imperial Japan already held vast territories with its eyes set on further conquest. The Japanese are famous for their ruthless fighting style and for the many atrocities that they committed. In Europe, the Wehrmacht had rapidly advanced across much of Europe, conquering Poland in 35 days and then going on to conquer Belgium, Netherlands, and France in just a span of 6 weeks. Their atrocities just as heinous, and they also looked unstoppable, with their eyes now set on the United Kingdom and the Soviet Union. Although America was currently at peace, they would soon too be dragged in.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
So while the war was raging on overseas, the military recognized that there would be a conflict approaching and they needed a small reconnaissance vehicle. They had a set of requirements: a light car below 1,300 pounds, 600-pound load capacity, 36-inch height, and no more than 80-inch wheelbase. The military invited many manufacturers to make a bid for the contract, but only one company replied initially. The first company to make a bid wasn't a big manufacturer like Ford. It was a small company called Bantam. It is said that the vehicle was designed in just 18 hours by Karl Probst, and a model was submitted in just 49 days. This initial vehicle was called the Blitz Buggy. The reason Bantam was able to do this so fast is because they already had trucks that were similar to what the military required. And the final product met all of the military's requirements except for the power, which was only 20 horsepower. However, if you think about it, the engine issue could be resolved very easily. But what could not be resolved is how small the company was. Military planners knew that such a small company could not meet the demands of such a large global conflict. This is what led to Ford and Willys being invited to submit a design to compete with the Bantam. The Bantam at that point had been updated to the BRC-60, literally standing for the Bantam Reconnaissance Car. Not creative whatsoever, but it's fine. Ford and Willys were granted access to Bantam's design and blueprints, and they were given free rein to build based on the Bantam design. What Ford submitted was the Pygmy, later named the GP, which is what many people think is the origin of the name Jeep. And Willys released the Quad, which would later be known as the MA. I think that literally just stands for military or Model A, something like that, very basic. And then all three designs were actually put into field testing, but by 1941, the military recognized the importance of having one standardized design. The benefits are pretty obvious. You only have to manufacture parts for one car. Come on. The one that was favored was the Willys design. Although the Ford was great in many regards, it was underpowered and unreliable. And the Bantam, as we know, was a great design because that's what everything was based off. But again, the company was simply too small to handle such a large demand. Willys also had an ace up their sleeve. Ace up their sleeve. Oh my god, I sound like a dork. A 60 horsepower engine named the Go Devil. Willys improved upon their initial design with the MB, again, very creative, and it incorporated some of the design elements of the other two competing vehicles. Although Willys won the bid, the demand was so high that Ford was also granted the rights to produce the Willys design. And between them, over 600,000 vehicles were built, with around 50,000 going to the Soviet Union. So let's talk about how this vehicle served in war. If you think of World War II, the Jeep is ubiquitous. The Jeep was seen in every theater of war. It was on the beaches of Normandy, it was in the deserts of Africa, you found them in the jungles of the Pacific. These vehicles were used everywhere and used for almost everything. They were used for the obvious purposes like transporting ammo, medical supplies, and rations, but they were also used as gun platforms, ambulances, firefighting vehicles, and they were used to tow planes and artillery pieces. In Saigon, they were even strapped with rocket launchers to eliminate Japanese dugouts. Adding to their versatility, they were able to be airdropped from gliders. The adaptability and dependability of the Jeep made it very crucial to the Allied war effort. And if you look at what the Axis powers had at that time, the advantage is even more evident. The reason this vehicle played such a big role in the Allied victory is that neither Germany or Japan had anything that could touch the Jeep in terms of versatility. The closest thing the Japanese had was the Type 95 Yonki, I don't know how to pronounce it, and the Germans had the Kubelwagen. I think that's right. Both were inferior, especially in terms of power. But what was the real game changer is the sheer amount of Jeeps there were in comparison to both Japanese and German vehicles. Over 600,000 Jeeps were built, only 50,000 Kubelwagens, and 5,000 Yonkis were built. Both countries combined couldn't match the sheer quantity of Jeeps. This means that the Axis forces lacked the mechanization that the Allies enjoyed. A lot of Axis forces were still using horse and buggy. Much of this was due to the United States' immense industrial capacity. If you look at it outside of just vehicles like the Jeep, we can look at tanks. In one-on-one combat, the German tanks were the best. Tigers, Panthers, Tiger II, they liked their cats. But they were simply outnumbered. For every one Tiger, there was probably 10 Shermans. That's a game changer. But in this case, when it comes to the Jeep, not only were there more, they were way better than what the Axis powers could make. There's hundreds of Jeep stories from this conflict, but let's talk about one of the most famous. It's a Jeep called Old Faithful. Old Faithful was the first vehicle awarded a medal by the US military. It served in the Pacific and was one of the first vehicles ashore in Guadalcanal. It was named Old Faithful because of how dependable it was. A Purple Heart is awarded to soldiers who are killed or injured in battle, and Old Faithful was awarded the Purple Heart because it took shrapnel damage during Japanese shelling. Despite this, it remained in duty, again being one of the first vehicles to land in the Bougainville campaign as well. Eventually, it was retired after driving 11,000 hard miles in the Pacific jungles. There are probably thousands of amazing stories about these vehicles, but sadly, every day they are being lost as fewer and fewer veterans survive. And if you think about it, based on the horrors that they saw, I doubt that stories about a vehicle are top priority. But just as the soldiers served faithfully every day, so did this Jeep. But day in and day out, the dependable Jeep served the men and women of the Allied forces. And many prominent people sung this vehicle's praises. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Ernie Pyle said, "It did everything, it went everywhere, was as faithful as a dog, as strong as a mule, and as agile as a goat. It constantly carried twice what it was designed for, and still kept going." George C. Marshall called it America's greatest contribution to American warfare. And finally, Enzo Ferrari, of all people, said, "The Jeep is America's only real sports car." I don't know what that means, but he said it, so, take that for what you will. Whatever you may think of the Jeep brand today, Stellantis, I don't know what it is now, its heritage is undeniable. I made this video because recently it was the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings. It dawned on me how every day we lose more and more of the people who witnessed the horrors of this conflict firsthand. All those firsthand experiences and stories and all the lessons that they learned are being lost with time. One thing I remember from when I was a kid was hearing about the last World War I veteran dying, and the idea that there are no more witnesses to such a monumental event felt so profound to me at the time. Many companies abandon the designs that make them what they are. For example, Land Rover. What the hell, dude? However, Jeep has doubled down and they've kept investing in this design because they did it right the first time. Not only are they keeping the memory of the original Jeep alive, in a way they're also keeping alive the memory of all the brave men who served along with it.
For a 75th anniversary, any car company can tell you about the milestones they've reached. But only one can tell you about Old Faithful, the Jeep that stormed the beaches of Guadalcanal, and the grateful soldiers who fought by its side that put it up for a Purple Heart.
If you want to hear about any other vehicle, a designer, anything, drop a comment down below, let me know. Or if you want to share what your favorite Jeep model is, let me know. Personally, the TJ is the peak for me. I haven't really connected with the JK or the JL, I'm not the biggest Jeep guy, but the TJ and the XJ, oh, beautiful. Well, thanks for watching again. I have a good life? Shit.